Welcome back to another instalment of New Zealand Bird of the Week, where in this video I will be talking about the New Zealand swan, relatives of today's living black swans but were a lot stockier. I hope you enjoy. Also known by their Maori name of Poa, the New Zealand swans, once endemic to New Zealand, were once found throughout the country's South Islands and the Chatham Islands, being quite different from their living relatives in a good amount of ways, as we'll get into. Starting with their discovery, the first bones of these birds were recovered from Monk's Cave at Sumner near Christchurch, dating back to the September of 1889. The landowner, and who the cave was named after, Henry Monk, had discovered bones of them which he presented to John Meeson and Henry Forbes, the latter of whom was the director of the Canterbury Museum at that time. Found alongside the remains of moa and fish bones, alongside antlers and spears, it was evident that this was a feeding area for early Maori and that they were feeding on the swans. Forbes described from the 3 coracoids and 2 partial humeri he was given, naming them as a new species, C. sumnerensis, noting that since the cave had been closed off before the introduction and arrival of the Australian black swans, he therefore stated that the bones could not be from them, also noting their larger size. Forbes's type material eventually became lost for some time after the 1950s, so they were declared as a nomen nudum, a species without an adequate description, and were redescribed as a new species, using bones from the Chatham Islands as Cygnus chathamensis. A few years later though, Forbes' specimens were eventually refound, and chathamensis fell under sumnerensis as a junior synonym for a good while afterwards. By the late 90s, paleontologist Trevor Worthy undertook the task of comparing a collection of these swan bones with Australian swan bones, and he eventually concluded that he couldn't find any big differences in either their size or proportion. The swan species of New Zealand were therefore thought instead to be a population of the living black swan that had colonised the country, and then got wiped out by early Maori who arrived here. This understanding remained the case for a good while afterwards, at least until 2017, when research was carried out by scientists from universities in Dunedin, Christchurch, Auckland and in Wellington, coming together to assess the wealth of pre-human arrival fossil bones, including from the swans, mainly to assess their DNA through modern genetic techniques. It turns out that Forbes all those years ago was indeed correct, and that the extinct New Zealand swan population did indeed belong to a different lineage of birds compared to their living Australian relatives, with there being one extinct species comprised of 2 subspecies, one on the mainland and one on the Chathams. After weeks of measuring bones from their wings and legs of many different specimens, it was also found that there were indeed differences, not only genetically, but physically too, that hadn't been previously addressed. The New Zealand swans were a good deal larger than living birds, exhibiting clear signs of the island roll effect, weighing an estimated 10 kilograms to the black swan's 6, as well as having shorter wings and longer legs, indicating that if they had continued to survive, were likely well on their way to flightlessness. The study also found that they split from their living relatives about 1 to 2 million years ago, becoming established in New Zealand soon afterwards. With all of this, their ecology was almost certainly different to an extent, though with their recent extinction, that is all tantalisingly left unknown. Like many of New Zealand's large birds, they weren't to last, becoming extinct around the mid-1450s after Maori had begun to colonise the country, with the remains, as stated earlier, being found in areas associated with human settlement. And with that, I thank you for watching this instalment of New Zealand's Bird of the Week. For next time, you're able to vote for the South Island kokako, birds that have orange wattles instead of the blue of their North Island cousins, and currently remain mysterious as to their status of being alive or not. With that, I'll see you next time, whenever that may be.